In the far corner of a quiet galaxy, a Tharnak scout vessel drifted through silence, its glowing sensors scanning the darkness like a curious hand searching blindly in the night. The crew had been sent to map dead space, a job most found boring until they stumbled upon it. There, just beyond a dying red dwarf star, lay a strange and massive field of silent, floating ships. Hundreds of them. The fleet looked ancient, covered in asteroid dust, wrapped in silence, still and unmoving as if it had been waiting for centuries. The designs were unlike anything in the Tharnax databases. No smooth curves or glowing orbs. These ships were sharp-edged, boxy, made of solid gray metal that seemed built more for war than beauty. Heavy armor plating lined their hulls, thick like the hide of some giant beast. Their weapons were not sleek energy cannons, but solid, strange barrels with massive coils behind them. At first, the Tharnax crew laughed. What kind of species would build such primitive things? One of the engineers scoffed. These look like floating junkyards. Another giggled, tapping the ship's scanner. Maybe we found the museum of some dead race that never made it past the Iron Age of space travel. The only symbols on the ships were strange letters, old and unreadable, U, N, S, F. Some thought it was a shipyard. Others thought it was a trap. But curiosity won. The Tharnax decided to tow 3 of the strange vessels back to their station for study. As they approached with magnetic tethers, the ships didn't respond. No defense systems activated, no warning messages came, no power signs detected. The Tharnax took it as proof that these were truly abandoned ruins. Inside, they found thick corridors made of cold steel, mechanical doors that still worked when pushed manually, and thick, clear windows that had survived the pressure of time. Everything felt heavy and built to last. It was old, yes, but there was something about the design, something too intentional, too perfect. Krex, a junior historian on the crew, stayed quiet as others made jokes. He had studied ancient galactic migrations and forgotten wars. As he walked through the halls of one of the ships, he felt something cold in his chest, a kind of respectful fear. These ships were not designed by primitives. They were designed by someone who expected them to face the worst. He copied the letters on the walls into his datapad, determined to research them later. He asked the commander for permission to access older archives in the Tharnax records, which most had ignored for centuries. "Do as you like," the commander said. "Just don't waste our time with ghost stories." Back on the research station, the scientists mocked the technology again. No plasma. No neural AI. Just solid metal and... What are these? Bullets? One researcher said, laughing at the massive ammunition racks. How did this species survive space battles with this junk? They called them dinosaurs in space. But when Krex searched through the deepest layers of the galactic archives, digging past centuries of forgotten wars and vanished species, he found the word human mentioned in passing. Not much remained, but enough to draw a terrifying picture. One report from an extinct scouting alliance called humans chaotic but brilliant, reckless yet unstoppable, and the only known race to win a war while outnumbered 100-1. Another line made Krex freeze. Human vessels are built with one purpose: to survive. If you find one, you are already too close. The words struck him like a cold wind. He rushed to share his findings, but few listened. The main science team had already begun trying to power one of the ships using external energy feeds. They wanted to bring the systems online for display and study. They thought it would make them famous. They connected their power cores, bypassed some circuits, and waited. Nothing happened for a full hour then. Slowly, dim lights began to flicker within the ship. The halls that had sat in silence for centuries lit up with a low red glow. A soft hum began, and the metal hull vibrated gently, like something waking from a long sleep. The team cheered. But Krex didn't. Something felt wrong. Then, a strange audio message began to play through the station's speakers, in a language no one understood. The voice was calm, deep, human, and even though no one could translate the words, the tone sent a chill through every listener. It didn't sound like a welcome. It sounded like a warning. "It's probably just a looped recording," someone said nervously. Old tech doing old things. But the ship's lights stayed on. Its weapon systems powered themselves without being touched. The once dead engines began to glow. Krex looked at the hull symbols again. U. N. S. F. He now knew what they meant. United Nations Space Fleet. A race thought extinct. A species forgotten. But their warships had not decayed. Krex could not sleep after what he had seen the ancient ship powering up on its own, the warning message in that strange human voice, the red lights glowing inside a vessel that had floated lifeless for centuries. Something deep inside him whispered that they had made a mistake, that the Tharnax Empire had awakened something far beyond their understanding. While others returned to laughing and discussing how to reverse engineer the old weapons, Krex buried himself in the archives, determined to learn everything about the creators of the ancient fleet. Most of the galactic records had been rewritten over the centuries. Empires rose and fell, and many events were lost or erased, but Krex dug deeper, looking into blacklisted files and forgotten history sectors. Slowly, he began to find clues, scattered words, and broken reports, warnings left by dying civilizations, and rare notes from long-vanished explorers. The word human kept appearing again and again, often followed by silence, destruction, or disappearance. One report spoke of a planet called Earth, home of the humans, now believed to be destroyed or unreachable. Another mentioned a human warship that held off an invasion fleet for 3 weeks alone. The stories were so wild they felt like myths, but Krex had just seen one of their ships come back to life without any outside help, so he could no longer dismiss them. He found a passage that made his hands shake. Humans vanished, not because they were defeated, but because they chose to disappear not to hide, but to rest. If they return, it will be by their own decision and not in peace. The words stayed with him like an echo inside his chest. Meanwhile, on the station, excitement had taken over. The scientists were already preparing to power the second ship. They believed the humans had left valuable technology behind and wanted to unlock it before any other species found out. Some thought they could use it to upgrade Tharnax military systems, but Krex feared that poking too deep into human design would wake something worse. No one listened to his warnings. They said he was afraid of ghosts. But Krex saw what others missed when the first ship had powered on. Quietly, secretly, its sensors had activated and looked at every ship, every being on the station. Krex accessed the logs from the ship's control room and found hidden codes being transmitted in bursts of tight, encrypted signals. He couldn't read the language, but it was clearly communication, perhaps between the awakened ship and others still sleeping in the fleet. Were they talking? Planning? Was there a command system still alive, buried in old hardware, waiting for a signal? Before he could share his findings, alarms rang through the station. The second ancient ship had powered up, and this time, something different happened. The ship began to move slowly, not with station control, but on its own, drifting out of the docking bay like it remembered what freedom felt like. The technicians tried to stop it, sending override commands, but none worked. The ship turned its massive cannons toward the station but didn't fire. Instead, it hovered, like a beast looking directly into the eyes of the ones who disturbed it. Then, it sent a message not in any known galactic language, but in the same human tongue from before. The station translated only one part of it. This is Unit 7, reporting partial system awakening. Defense ready. Awaiting protocol continuation. The message repeated, calm and cold. Krex watched in horror. The ship wasn't just awake, it was reporting to someone or something. Somewhere, someone might still be listening. The question was who? Days passed in chaos. Some on the station wanted to shut the ships down permanently, fearing that more would wake. Others wanted to power all of them up to seize control before the situation got out of hand. A third group believed that humans were indeed returning and wanted to greet them in peace. Krex didn't trust any of them. He left the station's surface and used an old data shuttle to reach the edge of the original graveyard, where hundreds of ships still floated, sleeping. He sent low-frequency pulses to the nearby vessels, not enough to wake them, but enough to record their patterns. What he found left him breathless. Each ship had a living system inside, Not artificial intelligence like Tharnak's computers, but something else. Something like memory. These ships were not just machines they remembered. They remembered their missions. They remembered their captains. They remembered war. Krex realized something terrible. The fleet was not abandoned. It was waiting for orders. And they had only scratched the surface. The next day, a deep space signal was detected coming from a region long believed to be uninhabited. The signal. The ships. The Tharnak's high command was informed, and panic began to spread through the Empire. If the humans were gone, who was sending signals? And if they weren't gone, what were they coming back for? Krex sat alone in his quarters, staring at the blinking light of the ancient message playing on his datapad. Over and over, the same voice, calm but filled with weight. He now believed one terrifying thing with all his heart: the humans had never left. They had simply stepped back, leaving their weapons behind, asleep and ready. Not because they were defeated, but because the galaxy had become too small for what they could do. Now, something had changed. The signal had been sent. The ships had responded. The creators of the fleet were not gone. They were coming. The silence before the storm was heavier than any sound, and as the stars blinked calmly across the vast darkness, Krex felt something inside the ancient graveyard shift. After the second ship moved on its own, and the mysterious human signal was picked up, no one could deny that something was waking up. But this time, it wasn't just one ship or a quiet whisper, it was everything. Across the far edges of the forgotten sector, the dead began to glow. One by one, ships that hadn't moved in centuries lit up with faint lights, and systems that should have rusted away activated with eerie precision. There was no noise, no explosions, just a spreading wave of cold purpose. Krex, hidden deep in a satellite chamber overlooking the graveyard, watched in fear and fascination as more and more vessels stirred, almost as if they were stretching after a long sleep. The Empire's scientists didn't know what to do. Their override systems failed. Their attempts to intercept the awakening protocols had no effect. Even the most powerful Tharnak's warships stayed back, not daring to get close. It was as if the fleet, built by a species everyone thought extinct, was slowly remembering who it was and what it had been made for. Krex accessed the inner network of the nearest awakened ship, trying to trace the commands, but what he found was not computer code, it was something older and stranger, a mix of data and emotion, of memory and machine. These were not ordinary weapons. They were thinking, remembering, feeling in a way no artificial intelligence had ever been programmed to. The logs spoke in metaphors, referring to battlefields as fields of sorrow and enemies as storms to be endured. This was not programming. This was poetry. And yet, buried beneath the calmness, there was something terrifying: a countdown. All across the graveyard, hidden within the data, was a timer. Krex traced the pulse from ship to ship, and every one of them was synchronizing to it. Whatever was coming, it was coordinated. He rushed to warn the station, but they were already in chaos. Ships on patrol had vanished without a trace. Drones sent into the graveyard were returning without data. One scout vessel tried to fire a missile at a rising warship and was instantly erased. Not destroyed. Erased. No explosion, no sound, just gone, as if the laws of space had bent for a second and swallowed it whole. The message was clear: do not interfere. Panic spread through the Tharnak's empire, and many called for evacuation of nearby systems. Others still wanted to claim the human technology for themselves, not realizing it was no longer theirs to claim. These ships weren't up for sale. They were soldiers waiting for a war they hadn't finished. Krex felt it too, a kind of tension in the air, like the universe was holding its breath. He stayed in the satellite chamber, recording everything, knowing no one would believe him later without proof. Then, on the 7th day after the second ship moved, something even more unthinkable happened. From deep within the core of the graveyard, a ship rose that dwarfed all the others. It was massive, the size of a city, black as night, covered in battle scars, yet glowing with new energy. Its name, barely visible along the side, was written in strange angular letters, but the translation came quickly. HSS. Redemption. The flagship. The commander. The heart of the fleet. As it rose, all other ships turned slightly toward it, not by command but by instinct. Krex watched as thousands of red lights came online in perfect unity. The countdown reached 0 and nothing exploded. Nothing fired. Instead, from the core of the Redemption, a single signal burst out in all directions, a call, a beacon, a message in human language. This time, the translation came fast: fleet status operational. Defense network online. Standing by for return of command. Awaiting reactivation of the species. The message repeated, and then repeated again. The ships were not planning to attack. They were waiting. But for who? Krex suddenly understood what the countdown was. It wasn't a timer to begin war, it was a timer to announce. The fleet wasn't threatening the galaxy. It was declaring its presence, saying to all who could hear that the builders, the humans, were no longer forgotten. They were coming back. Somewhere out there, the ones who made this fleet would hear the signal. If even one of them still lived, they would come. And when they did, they would find an army already waiting for them, untouched by time, stronger than ever. Krex stared at the blinking light on his screen and knew the galaxy had changed forever. The Tharnax Empire had tried to steal a secret buried for ages. Now, that secret had woken up. It had stretched its limbs. It had spoken. And what it said was not a threat, it was a promise. The humans were not dead. The war was not over. The awakening had only just begun. Across the quiet reaches of deep space, where once silence ruled for centuries, now pulsed a signal, a call that echoed through ancient satellites, forgotten beacons, and still operating long-range probes. The message sent by the awakened human fleet was clear, repeated endlessly. Fleet status operational. Defense network online. Standing by for return of command. Awaiting reactivation of the species. At first, the galaxy had laughed at it, then feared it. Now, they watched with trembling breath as strange changes began to occur. Somewhere in a remote system of neutral space, a dormant station powered on after hundreds of years. It wasn't controlled by the Tharnax or the Zor or the Arkal Dominion. Its systems bore no known design. The only markings on its metallic skin were human. Long forgotten by time, the builders, the name now whispered with awe and dread, were returning. It started with ghost signals. Fleets reported mysterious ships briefly appearing near them, scanning them, then vanishing without a trace. These vessels weren't hostile, but they moved in ways no ship should, bending physics, ignoring gravitational pull, blinking through asteroid belts without a scratch. The Council of Major Powers tried to locate their origin, but the ships didn't seem to come from any known world. Instead, they came from the silence itself, from places long erased on star maps, as if they had never existed. A mining colony deep in Sector 19 reported a strange object landing nearby. When approached, it opened like a blooming flower, revealing only a single item, a black box, smooth and cold, projecting one sentence in every known language: "The builders walk again." Panic followed. Some thought it was a warning, others a prophecy. But it was Krex, still hidden aboard a secret observation outpost near the ancient human fleet, who first saw the real change. The flagship HSS Redemption, once dark and silent, now moved slowly toward the edge of the graveyard. It didn't fire. It didn't threaten. It simply shifted, pointing its massive hull toward the stars, toward home. Across the galaxy, similar ships, long buried in vaults and museums, began to respond to the call. They activated, moved on their own, and flew toward the redemption signal. Each one followed invisible instructions, guided by something no empire could access. It wasn't just machines responding, it was people too. Humans who had vanished decades ago suddenly returned. Some had never aged. Some carried devices no one had ever seen. They spoke little, only confirming what everyone feared. They had heard the call. The builders had returned not as conquerors, but as commanders reclaiming what was always theirs. One of them, a tall man with steel-gray eyes and a strange implant in his skull, walked into a Tharnax command post unarmed. The guards froze as he raised one hand and spoke calmly. "I am Commander Ilian Mercer of the Terran Genesis Fleet. Stand down. You are standing on a preserved zone under human protection." And with those words, every weapon system in that sector shut down remotely, instantly. Not destroyed, just deactivated, like someone had simply pressed a power-off switch. The Tharnax were furious but helpless. They tried to capture Ilion but found themselves paralyzed by invisible tech that halted all electronic movement in the area. Other humans followed, appearing across research stations and forgotten colonies. They weren't aggressive, but there was a cold certainty in their actions, as if they knew how things would unfold before they even stepped in. The builders weren't demanding back the galaxy, they were reclaiming it, piece by piece, without firing a shot. Their technology bent reality, manipulating matter and energy in ways current science couldn't explain. Their knowledge was centuries ahead. Entire star systems they had once seeded with life now reawakened at their presence. Strange forests began growing in dead zones. Oceans returned to lifeless moons. It was as if their return was healing the damage of the last Great War. But not everyone was happy. The Zor Syndicate, seeing their influence weakening, attempted to destroy one of the reactivated ships. They sent 12 dreadnoughts. None returned. Not even wreckage was found, just a hollow message echoing from the battlefield: violation detected. Fleet defense activated. Casualties, none. Threat neutralized. It became clear to all the builders didn't need war. Their presence alone was power. No one could stop them because nothing could match them. And they never spoke in anger. They only acted with calm precision, as if everything was going exactly to plan. The galaxy slowly adjusted to this new presence. Treaties were rewritten. Tharnax officers who once mocked human ruins now bowed their heads when passing near builder zones. Museums dedicated entire sections to the return of humanity. Children were taught their history not as myth, but as warning. And still, no one knew what the builders truly wanted. Krex kept watching from afar, fascinated and haunted. He recorded every movement, every message, knowing it was history unfolding before his eyes. In his last log before vanishing, he wrote, "They didn't return to destroy. They came to finish what they started. And maybe to protect us from something worse." Because in the edge of the known galaxy, beyond the stars, even humans had forgotten something was stirring. Something old. Something angry. The builders had returned, but maybe not just for themselves. Maybe, just maybe, they had come back to stand between the galaxy and what was coming next. And if that was true, then the universe wasn't ready. The galaxy had gone quiet, not because of peace, but because of fear, the kind that settled deep into the bones of empires and whispered doubts into the minds of the most powerful beings alive. After the awakening of the ancient human fleet and the return of the builders, everyone waited for a declaration, a sign, or maybe a threat. But instead, the humans sent a message. Not just to one system, not to one alliance, but to the entire galaxy at once. No one knew how they did it. Every comms network, every private channel, every encryption system, no matter how advanced, received it simultaneously. The message didn't arrive as sound or data. It arrived as a vision directly into the minds of billions. In that vision, the stars faded away, and a lone human stood in the dark, surrounded by faint blue light. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, echoing through every species' understanding like it had been born from their own thoughts. "We are the children of Earth," he said calmly. "We were forgotten, erased from records, hunted to the edge of extinction. But we endured. And now we remember who we are." The silence that followed was heavy, pressing down on everyone watching, as if time itself had stopped to listen. "This galaxy," the voice continued, "is on the edge of something dangerous. You do not see it yet, but it is coming. We did not return to conquer. We returned because you will need us." The image changed. Now the vision showed ruined worlds, twisted skies, planets torn apart by invisible forces. These weren't records. They were warnings, glimpses of a future that had not happened yet. "We are the builders," the human said, now standing before a giant wall of stars marked with strange symbols. "We shaped the foundations of this galaxy long before your histories began. And we built more than machines. We built peace, order, protection. But then we were betrayed. Not by aliens. By ourselves." The scene shifted again, this time showing glimpses of ancient humans, brilliant, powerful, united, and then divided, fighting each other, destroying the very systems they had created. The war you never knew about burned for centuries. When it ended, we buried our own legacy, hiding it from all, even from ourselves. Until now. Around the galaxy, leaders watched this with disbelief and unease. The Tharnax High War Council shut down all transmissions, but it was too late. The message had already entered the minds of everyone. The Arkle Dominion tried to trace the signal's source, but their systems were already flooded with harmless but untraceable data loops that kept repeating only one phrase: "The past has returned." The voice in the message grew quieter now, but somehow more powerful, like a whisper before a storm. "You must choose," it said. "Continue your path of war, of division, of lies, or join us. Not as subjects, but as allies. There are threats coming that care nothing for your politics, borders, or technology. We have seen them. We have faced them. And they are coming again." The final part of the vision showed a shadow, a shape so vast and dark it seemed to consume the stars around it. No one could understand what it was, but every creature who saw it felt something cold, something that made them shiver even in the warmth of suns. The message ended not with a command, but with an invitation. "Prepare," the voice said. "We will contact those who are willing. We will share what must be known. But we will not wait forever." And then, silence. The stars returned. The networks rebooted. But the galaxy had changed forever. Across 100 systems, people stood frozen, some weeping, some kneeling, some looking to the stars with new fear and new hope. Debates began immediately. Was it real? Was it a psychological attack? A hoax? But those who had encountered the builders knew it wasn't. Their ships still drifted silently at the edges of sectors, unmoving yet untouchable. Their ancient stations glowed faintly with power that modern science could not explain. And more importantly, people had started dreaming of places they had never seen, of machines they had never touched, of memories that didn't belong to them. It was as if the message had awakened something inside them. Some called it madness. Others called it destiny. In a remote moon colony, a young scientist discovered a buried relic, shaped like a shard of obsidian and humming with life. It activated the moment he touched it, projecting blueprints and languages he understood instantly, despite never learning them. He wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, similar events happened: tools, weapons, knowledge, all left behind by the builders, now waking up in the hands of those who were ready. The message was no longer just words. It was the beginning of a transformation. The humans had not come to take control. They had come to unlock something. Something inside the galaxy. Something inside its people. But while many prepared, others plotted. Not everyone welcomed the return. The Zor Syndicate feared losing power. The Tharnax were too proud to bend to ancient humans. A few began secret programs to build weapons capable of matching the builder tech. But deep down, they knew it was pointless. The real weapon wasn't in ships or guns. It was in the message, the change it brought, the fear it created, and the hope it gave. Because even those who hated the humans now watched the stars more carefully, wondering when the shadow would come. The galaxy was no longer alone. And it would never be the same.